we will talk about this chapter. It's what should I do as a founder? And this will depend on many variables, like from your own perspective. Again, in my opinion, why my journey was different. Why? Because from day one, I knew that I didn't want to run the company. I never wanted to run a company. I like to create companies, which is different. I like to create teams. I like to create cultures, but I don't like to be kind of like the CEO and do the things that a CEO needs to do. First of all, I did it in Tecton and I was the worst. I don't know why I didn't fire me before, but that's kind of like my journey. In general, your role of a founder might change depending on how many co-founders you have. And please do not have 10 co-founders. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but the more people, the less agility you will have. So in many companies, the average is 2 or 3 co-founders. Depending on what you want to do, you need to define who's going to be the CEO. This person could be the most knowledgeable, could be the one who's selling. It's up to you. But the maturity of the company will change. And I like to use the example of a kitchen. When a restaurant opens and you have a kitchen, everybody's a cook because you need to put food on the table. So I don't care if you're a sous chef, master chef, or whatever, everybody's cooking. But as you scale and you improve, now you need to start defining roles, like who's going to be the sous chef, who's going to be the prep cook, who's going to be the master chef or the head chef or whatever. And that means that not the founders are the best ones to scale or to grow inside of the company. And this is fine if you are mature enough, in my perspective. Why? Because not everybody is Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg was a kid who became the CEO, and he was able to stay as a CEO because he learned and he liked that. Many other people, they like, no, I don't want to be the CEO, like in Google, like Sergey and Larry. They hired different CEOs just because they realized that they're good in different avenues, and this is perfect. Why? Because, for example, my value for many of the companies that I started are related to the culture or the 0 to 1, how I create the culture, how I scale them to a point where somebody can take the reins. In other cases, there's people that are like extremely technical. So they are the masters of arts of IPs and everything, and they're good at that. So they hire somebody else. Why I mention this? Because I saw many times companies failing or startups failing because the CEO do not want to leave their position. No, they want to be the head of sales. They want to be the head of the company. They want to be the head of product, and they are bad just because, sorry, we're not good for everything. Try to understand like what you're good for and try to position in that matter. And if sometimes happens, if your position is outside of the company, sorry, that's the best for the company, you will leave. Like, again, that's my journey. I want to leave the company because I thought the company will grow more without me involved into day-to-day. That doesn't mean that I'm not belonging to the company. I help them in a different ways or avenues. So different maturities, different stages, it's going to be up to you. There's people that will start from day one and they will continue until the company got acquired or go to an IPO or they became the CEO or a board member. Or people will stay and they might leave the company and come back in different phases of maturity. And that's fine. Remember that there is a difference between being a partner or own the stock of the company and a difference to be an employee of the company. Because you might be an employee and also an owner, and you can be an owner and not an employee. So those things need to be very well defined, especially when you're scaling, because not everybody in your co-founding team might scale. Said that, your core team when you're scaling or when you're starting the company is key, because those people are going to be the ones that are going to be helping you to maintain the culture. But at the same time, your co-founders perhaps won't scale to the needs of the company, especially if you're growing really fast. Perhaps you will need a CFO who is real CFO because they manage millions of dollars and they know and they have the process to do it without losing money. Do you want your co-founder or yourself to make mistakes that might cost a lot of millions? It's up to you. I will say no. Let's bring somebody who we can learn from. Perhaps you will be the CFO, but you will have a co-CFO so you can learn, or I can learn, and that way I can see and realize like, yeah, no, I need an MBA, or I don't want to manage this, and let's hire somebody who's really good. And that talks about how professional you want the company to be. And we will have another chapter talking about that, but in general, as a founders, you need to understand that your position might not be the one that you like, needs to be the one that the company needs to create value. Now we will talk about the role of the CEO. Regardless of if you are the CEO or you hire a CEO, you need to understand what the CEO needs to be. Why? Because otherwise, if you are not the CEO, you will be interrupting the CEOs in their day-to-day. So first of all, the CEO that you have needs to be in charge of sales. They need to be in charge of sales. And I'm repeating this because many people says, no, they need to run the company. And that's one piece of the purposes of the CEO. But if you have a CEO that do not make any sales, you don't have a CEO, you have a COO perhaps that will be making operations. And that's fine, but just be careful of what you need, because that will go into your process of how you recruit. In my case, it was really clear that my CEO needs to manage two things, people and sales. Why? Because in general, I think every business, it's human needed still. So you need people skills. I'm not very good at that, but the CEO was really good because her background was in part on HR. The company that I had a lot of people, like a couple of hundred people that you need to manage. So the background of like understanding HR or people was critical for the CEO. The second one is sales, because I was the one doing most of the sales. Now, in general, you will keep helping doing sales for your company, but you need as a CEO to ramp up. And of course, the role of a CEO is not something that you will just find suddenly in one day and the next day they can do it. I will explain you how was my journey. I was trying to look for a CEO from day one, but I was not actively looking because it costs money. So you need to have the funds to pay for the CEO. So it's a process that, I mean, if you're lucky, it might take you a couple of years, but in general, at least in my case, it took me like 5. Why? From the moment that we were able to pay for a CEO, we started looking not with headhunters, because I mean, again, it's my opinion. It didn't work out. I was working more on referrals, and I was lucky enough that I was able to find her through a friend. Long story short, the process of getting a CEO, it's really long because you need to make sure that it's the right person, and also you need to do knowledge transfer. This means that the recruitment process took me like 6 months just to make sure that she was the right one. She was getting the culture of tech done, and also that she really gets it. She was not very expert in technology, which that's fine because she can learn. She won't be a coder. But at the same time, you need to accompany this, or you need to work with this CEO for at least 2 years, just to make sure that she gets it. Because it's not that easy as people say, so like, oh yeah, in a year or so. No, people might say, perhaps you can find somebody from the same industry. Even with that, it's a different company, different people, so just make sure of that. But again, going into kind of like the summary of where the CEO needs to be, is to be in charge of sales, is to be in charge of people, but most important of that, he or she needs to be able to build their own team or her own team. Why? Because you might have people that you think that are good or great, but perhaps they're not in the right position. Perhaps they don't know where to scale. The CEO needs to understand like how I can play with these chess pieces to make sure that they win the battle. So that's kind of like the 3 things that you need to make sure to remember when you're talking about the role of the CEO to be successful.